Welcome back. This is Todd Sylvester with the Todd Sylvester Inspires Belief Cast. Thank you once again for joining us today. I want to thank our sponsor, Veracity Networks. Thank you for believing in me. And I also want to thank Paul Cardall for the wonderful music you're just listening to. He's an amazing man and one of my heroes. I am so grateful today to have this wonderful human being on our Belief Cast today. His name's Hayden Paul. Thanks for joining us, Hayden.
Excited to be here.
Yeah, thanks for being here. Hayden was referred to me by another close mutual friend of ours, and I've been so excited for this. I've been waiting a few weeks to have him here, and he's finally here.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to thank him for taking the time. A little background on Hayden. He's an advocate in the battle against pornography, a disciple of Christ, husband, soon to be father. Congratulations.
Thank you.
He's a United States Marine. I want to talk about that. And he's active in the fight against child sex trafficking. And he just told me he works at Operation Underground Railroad.
Yes, I do.
That's awesome.
Luckily.
He and his wife, Savannah, have a weekly podcast titled I Stand at the Door that seeks to help youth, parents, and spouses and faith leaders navigate the complicated battle against pornography. He has a website, which we'll get into, and I'll let him share that with you towards the end so you guys can all go check it out. So here we are. Hayden, thanks for joining us.
Hey, it's good to be here.
Yeah. So why don't you tell our listeners just a little bit about your background? Where did you grow up and about your family?
Yeah, so I grew up in Sandy, and I actually went to the same high school as you, Brighton High School.
Yeah.
Go Bengals. And I graduated in 2014, so right now I'm 24 years old. My family growing up, I'm the oldest of 4 children, and so I'm the older brother. I love it. My youngest sibling, she's 11, and so I kind of got that. She almost to me seems like, and I don't know if you've experienced this, but it almost feels like more than a sibling. You almost feels like it's like a hybrid between having like a daughter and a little sister, where it's like you value her so much different. So
for sure,
yeah, love, and I just have a great relationship with all my family. And after high school, I served a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Budapest, Hungary.
Oh, right on.
Which is a cool place.
Yeah, I bet
Eastern
it is.
Europe, hard language, not the most useful. I think I'm actually more likely to get struck by lightning twice in my life than to run into someone that speaks Hungarian. If you take the whole world population,
I'm sure. So. Yeah. Well, I'm sure that language is tough to speak. I have a hard time speaking English still, right?
Too.
Let alone learn another language.
Know, seriously.
Right? Yeah.
That's the funny part is, you go on a mission, you're 18 years old. I mean, you can barely even speak English, and you're supposed to speak a whole other foreign language and do this big work. And so It was awesome. I learned that I can accomplish anything I set my mind to. If I'm diligent and I work hard, then I can learn something.
Right.
Yeah, very difficult.
Growing up as a child, did you have that same type of confidence? Were you that kid that kind of felt pretty sure of himself, or did you struggle?
No, I struggled a lot.
Talk about that.
Yeah. And we'll talk about this later too as we get more into it. And it really contributed, I think, to the issue I had with pornography growing up. But I always, and I had no reason to believe this whatsoever, but I always struggled with the idea that someone could love me. I quickly love and forgive. Like it's super easy for me. Sometimes to my own detriment, where you just you forgive too easily, and so you just get messed with too much. But growing up, I always just had this little voice in the back of my head that says, yeah, you're unlovable. And so in high school, I was very susceptible to peer pressure, and I would just kind of do things to get friends. Yeah. And I realized that to actually have friends, you can't be working to get friends. You have to find something you're interested in, and then friends come from that. You just be yourself, and then you find like-minded individuals who you want to be friends with. But if you're out there just searching for friends, you probably aren't going to find any. Right. And so I wasn't always confident in myself. I wasn't always. Where
do you think that came from? That you said you had this voice, and we all have it. That voice in our head that tells us we're not good enough, and that kind of thing. I mean, why do you think you struggled with that? Did something happen, or was it just something just growing up as a kid? Is kind of what you felt?
I don't know. I mean, nothing to do with my parents. Like my parents always loved me. They took care of me, and I had a great family situation. It just, I think I'm of the opinion that sometimes we just have these proclivities towards negative ideas so that we can overcome them, and it ends up being a strength later on, right? And so there's a scripture that I really love, and it pretty much talks about how God gives us weaknesses so that they can become strengths, so that we'll humble ourselves, and then those weak things will actually become strong, right?
I love that.
And I really think that a lot of us are born with these issues that we struggle with, whether with mental health, whether it's physically, so that we can because when you fight to overcome something like that, you don't just overcome it, but you gain all these attributes from trying to overcome it, right? And I think that it's key having these weaknesses, and having that voice in the back of my head. It allowed me to humble myself and to figure out the truth, which is that I am lovable. And then I gained all these other attributes in the process of that.
Wow, beautifully said. One of the things I tell my clients all the time is adversity is your wake-up call to your greatness. And I couldn't agree more that we have these challenges in order for us to work through them, because it's going to make us grow. It's going to make us stronger. And again, it becomes our strengths, right? And ultimately, that's why you're sitting here today, because you've overcome some things, and probably at times still battling those things. But here you are, and you've kind of, gotten past that, but now here you are giving back, and I'm so grateful that you're willing to come share these things. I know at age 13 you came across pornography, and tell us about that, and tell us what kind of road this led you down, because I know what I love about you, Hayden, is you're an open book about this, because it's almost like, I don't want to tell anyone I struggle with pornography, but
it's very taboo.
It's very taboo kind of thing, but guys like you who are out there talking about it are actually making it better for people who are like, well, if they can talk about it and be open, maybe I can. So talk about how that happened at age 13. So
I think first off, my background of how I viewed pornography prior and kind of how it was addressed to me at a younger age. I think a scare tactic is used more often than not when it comes to pornography, when it comes to teaching your children. And so, especially kind of in any sort of faith community, they're like, don't look at pornography because it's evil. You're lusting after someone. It will, look at these families that have been destroyed because of it. And the problem is it's just not effective. And you know this better than anyone. Fear is not an effective motivator. It is a motivation, but it pales in comparison to other motivations, right? And so what happened was, it's so enticing, when you're 13 years old, and I know people that got into it when they're 8 years old, where they stumbled upon it. And even then, it wasn't really a sexual thing; it was more like a curiosity thing, But by the time when I was 13, you start to go through puberty, you start to be attracted to girls more, and it was curiosity kind of, and also just that inherent drive that drove me to look for it. But the problem is that because it was addressed in a fear-based way when I was younger, that I didn't want anyone else to know that I had done that, because then they were going to think that I'm like one of these bad people. And I think fear leads to shame, and then shame is kind of it's that barb. It's the barb in the hook, right? And so I was ashamed that I looked at it, and I didn't tell anyone about it. And when I was 13, it didn't necessarily become like this huge problem. But as time went on, that hook sunk deeper, and that barb got longer and longer. And finally, by the time I was 17, it was every single day I was looking at pornography. I would get kind of irritated if I couldn't. I would get like kind of like a withdrawal type thing. And I would isolate myself from my family and my friends so that I could look at pornography. And it really affected my self-image. And it's funny because it's this loop, right? Where I feel like I was talking about that belief that I had, that limiting belief of that I'm not lovable. So what happens is you seek out pornography because it's like, oh, well, pornography is always going to love me. They're always inviting me in, right? But then what it does is it reinforces that original belief, which is I'm unlovable because of this. And it's just this self-defeating cycle that only leads to despair. Right.
Well, go back to, you said you felt shame. Will you just let our listeners know what's the difference between guilt and shame, and why is one maybe better than the other?
So guilt is is the feeling you get when you do something wrong, but you know that you are not a bad person. When you do something bad, but you know you're not a bad person.
Right.
Shame is you do something bad, and therefore you think that you're a bad person, and so you're ashamed. You hide. Guilt, it leads to change.
Yeah.
Shame leads to digression.
Good way
And
of saying that. Yeah.
I think that, for example, so I'm, like I said, like in the introduction, I'm a United States Marine, and I'm reading this book right now called The Warrior Ethos. And it talks about how there's different motivations behind warriors, and there's the shame culture and there's the guilt culture. And so shame has been used by warriors in the past to be like, I'm never going to desert because then I'm going to be ashamed. And like the Japanese war culture, they would fall on their swords. If they did something that would dishonor their family or whatever, they would fall on their swords, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of what you do when you're ashamed. You say, I'm going to fall on my sword. So you give up. That's really what it is.
Yeah, you're kind of giving up. Yeah.
Where guilt, it's like if you do something wrong, you work to fix it.
Yeah.
And that's something that's motivated by positivity, by a positive look of the future. Where shame says, because I've been this way in the past, that's the only way my future is going to look, and so I might as well just give up.
Wow. Yeah, that's a very well said and defined that very well. I think because a lot of people, I know with my clients, they're not sure what is the difference between guilt and shame. And then when you mention it that way, they're like, oh yeah, I'm feeling a lot of shame. I think I'm bad.
Yeah.
Right? Versus I did something bad.
Something bad.
Right?
Completely different.
And I love how you said guilt makes you work for a solution, where shame, you digress and you kind of, you don't resolve it.
Yeah. And I think that, so we're not, as human beings, we can't necessarily just progress by ourselves. We're social creatures. We're supposed to access our potential, we need to access the resources that other people bring to the table.
Right.
And when you're ashamed, you don't want anyone else to know anything about you, about the problem, right?
Right.
And so you isolate yourself. And isolation is kind of where any addiction festers, right?
For sure.
Whether it's with substance abuse or with something like pornography, when you isolate yourselves because of shame. And what that does is allow you to just repeat that cycle over and over again until the chains are just too thick where you can't break them yourself.
Right. And it sounds like that's kind of where you had gotten to in your addiction with pornography around age 17. Is that what you were saying?
Yeah.
Where it was like a daily thing, and you'd get upset or grumpy or angry if you didn't get a chance to look at it.
Yeah.
So start back there from there and kind of what that led to.
Yeah. And so what happened was I knew I wanted to serve a mission for the LDS church. And, before you go on a mission like that, you're supposed to be living the ideals of the church, of Jesus Christ. And I knew that I had to get this fixed before, but like I said before, I was ashamed. I didn't want to share it with anyone. And with any sort of addiction or a bad habit, you really do need other people to help you stay accountable. And so what happened was I was able to limit the amount that I viewed pornography, but I never completely took care of it. And so I lied. And my church leaders, they asked me like, hey, a lot of people struggle with pornography. Is this something you struggle with? And if so, I want to help you out.
Right.
And I was just so ashamed that I lied to them. I just looked in their eyes and I lied to them.
You ended up lying.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I lied all the way up until I went on my mission. And when I went on my mission, after a few weeks, I had a realization, like, I lied to get here, and I'm not going to feel comfortable representing, Jesus Christ,
right.
Having done what I've done. And so finally, after, I was 18 at the time, not ever divulging it to anyone, I finally talked to a church leader, and I said, I've struggled with this, and I've never told anyone. I lied to get here. And immediately, just like this weight was lifted off my shoulders,
really?
Right? And it was so freeing to say, like, hey, I have had a problem, and I haven't been able to fix it on my own. And I think that a lot of times, in like a 12-step addiction recovery program, like a big a big step is confession. And one of the steps too is making a written list of all the people you have harmed and making restitution, right?
Sure.
And these types of things. And
yeah.
and I think more than anything, there's a lot of times there's a negative connotation with confession or restitution. And I think it's nothing but positive, because you're not just going there and saying, hey, I did something wrong.
Right.
You're saying, hey, I believe I can be better. And this is a step towards that. It's actually hopeful. It's saying,
Gotcha.
I know that I'm not a lost cause. That's why I'm coming here, because I'm worth so much more than this problem that I've had.
Wow.
And I think that's the feeling that you get when you go and you confess some struggle that you've had, or you go and you share a burden with someone. It's like, I'm more than this, and this is me almost bearing my testimony to you that I'm more than this.
Wow. That's wow. So you share this on your mission.
Mm-hmm.
So talk about that, because a lot of times when you hear stories, someone shares that on their mission, they end up coming home.
Mm-hmm.
And, a lot of times they even struggle even worse because they feel shameful.
Yeah, they feel shameful.
I go on this mission and I blow it, and now I'm back, and now people are asking, why are you home?
Yeah, and
and that kind of stuff. It just kind of,
mm-hmm.
So talk about what happened to you after you had shared that heavy news.
Yeah, so I my church leader, he talked with me, we worked, and he's just like, you know what? Serve. Just serve.
Wow.
That's what you need to do. That's what the Lord wants you to do, is serve. And so I went out on my mission and I did that. And my mission was the greatest experience of my life. I learned so many amazing things, and I really became a different person. The thing that was hard, though, is that I struggled with my thoughts.
Sure.
On my mission.
You're still having those
You still
thoughts.
have those thoughts and those images in your head. And so I struggled with those on my mission, but in terms of habitual pornography or masturbation, I didn't struggle with that. And then I get home from my mission. I have a completely changed perspective. I can see so much clearer because I don't have pornography clouding my mind and my vision, right? And I'm just so excited to be home. And about 3 months later, and I find this to be the case with a lot of guys in similar stories with me, they fall back into pornography. They get back into social media. They start using their phones more, and then they fall back into that same trap. And this time was completely different, because immediately I reached out for help. I reached out to a church leader and I said, hey, I'd love to talk. And what happened was, even though I was honest, it was still rooting itself into my life. And I was so frustrated. And I learned this lesson that I have to face this forthright. And I never did that before my mission. I never lived normal life, because as a missionary, life is so much different. You're engaged in teaching the gospel all day.
Yeah, it's totally different when you get home, right?
Yeah, and it's totally different than just normal life. I put that in quotations. But,
sure.
And so I learned that I needed to learn how to live life without pornography, and that was going to be a process. And 3 years later, I'm finally... I think this week is a full year since I've looked at pornography, and before that, thank you. And before that, it was 6 months, and then I had one mess up, and then it's been a year, and so it's really been a while since I've been free from this, and it was a process that took me to some dark places with myself, so frustrating, so long, and I've never been so grateful for a trial in my whole entire life.
Wow. Well, speak about that for a minute. Why are you grateful for it?
Yeah. So it's for that same, it's that reason that we talked about earlier. Yeah. Where it's so weird. And from a spiritual aspect, this is how I can share it. There's a story in the Bible where Jesus Christ talks about turning water to wine, right?
Yeah.
And in this story, there's a detail in there that I think we overlook sometimes, but I think it's pertinent to the story, where Jesus asks these servants to bring him these pots that are used for the ritual cleansing of the Jews. And so a little bit of history with Jewish ritual cleansing is anytime you went and you ate, or you went to a temple, or you went to a marriage feast, or to anyone's house, you would perform what's called ritual cleansing. And you'd take a cup and you'd pour water over your hands, and it would fall back into the basin, and you pour over each hand 3 times. And then you would go in, and that represented washing yourself from your sins, cleansing yourself from your sins.
Okay.
Right? And so he uses these pots that are used to hold the sins of all present. And he takes that dirty water and he turns it into wine, and then it nourishes them. And so this is what I've found, is that sin is only faith destroying. It only brings negativity into your life. It's dirty unless you bring it to the Savior. And what that means is repenting or changing, whether it's going through a 12-step program, whatever it is,
right.
overcoming. And then it turns out that this dirty water is now nourishing you. And I found that to be the experience, that this problem with pornography that I faced, if it was never taken care of, it only would have led to my demise.
Right.
But because I brought it to the feet of the Savior and I changed, it has now nourished my faith. I am stronger. I'm a better person because of it. And so faith destroying sin has turned into faith promoting experience.
Dang.
And
So
I
well
think
said.
that's really what it is when you set out to change, then all of the negativity in your life, when you look back in retrospect, will only bring positivity once overcame.
Right. You mentioned, thank you for sharing that. That's powerful. You mentioned you were lying to everyone about it before. Mm-hmm. How did lying keep you stuck? Because I know that's a big part of the addiction in general,
process,
right?
Yeah. So there's this awesome quote that I love, and it goes like this. It says, every lie you tell incurs a debt to the truth, and sooner or later that debt will be paid.
Whoa.
And what happens is you either pay that debt willingly, or you're going to get your house foreclosed on. You're going to have to sell everything you have, and pretty much, the moral IRS is going to come and take everything that you have. Right?
Yeah.
And so it's important to start making those payments.
Yeah.
I find it easy to just get it all out as quick as possible, but sometimes it just takes telling the truth little at a time. Like when you have all these lies, and what happens is, every single lie you tell, you have to cover up with another lie and another lie, and it gets so big that the reason why you keep lying is because, getting that lie out there, it seems like it's going to cripple you. But the problem is it's only going to get bigger. Your best course of action is to take care of it now, because it is not going to get smaller in the future. It's only going to get bigger.
Right.
And that in itself is a lie, that you're going to be able to, just keep managing all these lies that you're telling to yourself, to others, and that someday it's just going to all go away, but it only gets bigger. And so for anyone that's listening that maybe has, some sort of lie that they've been telling, you have no better course of action than to take care of it right now. If you wait any longer, it only gets bigger. The betrayal trauma or whatever is only going to get larger. Your best course of action is taking care of your problem now.
No. Wow. So what do you do now? Because you mentioned you struggle with the thoughts and some obviously images at times, I'm sure, come into your mind. How do you deal with that? Like, what is like your course of action for that? Because I think a lot of people listening might go, yeah, I'm kind of where he's at. I haven't been looking at it, but I'm still, my thoughts are just like consuming. What have you done that's been helpful in that realm? And how has like even your spirituality and your faith in God helped you in that?
Yeah. So I, luckily now, and for about the last year, I actually don't struggle with those sort of thoughts anymore. Okay. But for a large for a long time, I did. And what I've learned is that you can't leave empty space in your head. There's no such thing. You can't, if you have a limiting belief, let's say, you can't just take that limiting belief out and then just have an empty space there. You have to replace it. And so you have to replace your mind with good, uplifting things. Okay. And and what that looks like, and it may be different for everyone, maybe it's, an hour of meditation a day, or I know, like 30 minutes of meditation a day. Maybe it's, reading positive, uplifting books. For me, is reading the scriptures every day, engaging in personal prayer. And I learned this something about resilience. I actually don't have it on me right now. Normally, I wear a bracelet that just says resilience on it. And because I'm not a lot of things, I'm not the most talented, I'm not the smartest, but I am one thing. I'm not the strongest, but I am one thing. I'm resilient.
Right.
I don't give up. I don't give in. And that's really what it is, where every single time you have a bad thought, you fight it. Every single time you have a bad thought, you fight it over and over and over and over and over and over again.
Right.
Until finally you win.
Yeah.
And now I don't have to, like, maybe every once in a while a lewd thought will come to my head, but I've practiced so much that I can push it out. Right.
Yeah.
And I think when it comes to anything that has to do with overcoming an addiction or a habit, the key is resilience.
Right. Love that. How is your being a Marine, the training to be a Marine, I'm sure, has that helped you with kind of this mentality you're talking about?
Yes. No, for sure. I love the Marine Corps. I love all the things that you can learn. It's actually very interesting, all the parallels you can draw from war strategy and tactics and apply it to addiction recovery. There's so many things there.
Sure.
And I learned once again on in the Marine Corps that you are capable of so much more than you give yourself credit for.
Right.
You give up. I give up at about probably 40% of my capacity.
Yeah.
And if I can break through a mental barrier, then you can access the other 60%, and it's crazy.
Yeah.
And I just, for anyone that is struggling with any sort of addiction or habit, just keep pushing forward every single day. It's the consistency, it's the resilience, and eventually you do find freedom. There's so many weaknesses right now that I'm working on that I thought that the Marine Corps would have solved for me. Like, it's hard for me to wake up in the morning early and attack the day.
Really?
It's so hard for me, and that's my new weakness.
That's the new one. That's the one you're working on now.
Yeah, that's the one I'm working on right now.
Sweet.
And but I know that if I'm resilient, if I keep trying, if I don't just say, all right, well, whatever, I'm not the type of person that wakes up early and attacks the day. As long as I never get to that point, there's gonna probably a year from now, maybe 2 years from now, it's just gonna be so.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a part of me.
I can relate with that. I used to really struggle with getting up in the morning. And I told myself, my belief was, well, I'm not a morning person.
Yeah.
Right? I'm a night owl. So I'd stay up late and I just struggled getting out of bed. But it wasn't until I changed that belief. No, I'm a morning person. I get things done. I can pop out of bed like a piece of toast. And so I can now get up at 4 a.m. and just pop out and I'm ready to rock and roll.
When do you usually wake up in the morning? Is that
4 a.m.?
You wake up at 4 a.m. every morning. What the heck? Yeah. What time do you go to bed?
10 o'clock.
10 o'clock.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
But and the reason why I bring that, this isn't about me. I want you to know that I think what you're saying is it takes time. I thought there's no way I'll ever wake up early in the morning. I hate getting up early, but now I absolutely love it. But there was that process involved. And we were talking this off air here where we were saying we all want it now. Yeah. We want to, as soon as we make up our mind, okay, everything's fine. No, there's a process involved, whether it's, getting up earlier, or overcoming a pornography addiction or getting rid of those negative thoughts. There's a process involved.
It takes time.
And it takes work. And I think why I asked you, how's your Marine training helped you? Because you learn how to work hard. Yeah. You're probably already a hard worker. You went on a mission, did all these things. But being a Marine, I would imagine they don't mess around. You can't just be lazy, right? You got to work hard.
The consequences are so much bigger, and that's what I love. One of the things that I love from the Marine Corps and my military training is that everything matters. Everything you do, the small things that you do matter. Yeah. And things like organization, cleanliness. It seems so dumb. Like when you're going through boot camp, if they can pick out just the littlest things and just roast you on it. And the reason is because if you can't pay attention to the details, then essentially those details will get bigger and bigger and bigger until, you know, you're responsible for something really bad that's happened, you know,
Right.
either whether it involves your life or the life of your brother to your left or right, because you didn't pay attention to those details. One of the things that I learned, I think that applies directly to the fight with pornography, is the importance of setting in, okay, I'll just explain. I don't know the way to articulate other than this way. So
Sure.
a lot of times when people are struggling with pornography, they don't put blocks and stuff on their phones because they're like, I need to learn how to overcome this without that, because the problem is with me. So I just need to learn how to control my thoughts and behaviors, and I don't need to put these blocks on my phones or do all these things. It makes me feel childish, like a kid, right? Especially with like the older crowd. If you're in your 20s or 30s, it's like, oh, I have to have, you know, my wife or someone put
sorry,
a block
I don't have
on my
that
phone.
access.
I don't have access on that. You feel stupid. And the way I look at it is this: it's so important to do things like that because, you know, when you're in the cycle of looking at pornography, it's kind of like when you go into the ocean, you're getting tossed about by waves. So like if you've ever been like in Hawaii and you get this pummeled by like a huge wave and you don't know which way's up, and then finally you get your bearing, you stand up, and then another wave hits you again and hits you. And what happens is you're not going to be able to make any strides in your recovery until you stop the access to it. So it's like if someone's addicted to, you know, any other sort of substance, it's like figure out, and depending on how heavy the addiction, sometimes you have to taper off, right? But you know, you eventually get to the point where you just cut off access to it. That's why people come to facilities like a rehab facility or anything like that, is because it's like, let's stay away from it. So that way you have a moment to kind of get your head on straight and organize your thoughts and figure out the root of the true problem. And in the military, if I were to put the Marine Corps' military strategy into like a couple words, it would be cover and move, and or fire and maneuver. And what that means is that we have this saying that says suppression. So suppressing fire, for those who don't know, is like firing at the enemy to keep their head down. So you're not necessarily trying to kill the enemy. You're firing near the enemy's position, so that way they're not looking up and firing at you, right? So you're suppressing the enemy. So we have this saying that says suppression without movement is a waste of ammo, but movement without suppression is suicide.
Whoa.
So what a lot of people find is that unless you suppress the enemy, so for me it was putting blocks on my phone, and things like that, unless you can, you know, keep the enemy's head down, you're not going to be able to make actual movements to actually taking your objective, to actually destroying the enemy, right?
Right.
And so what happens is in the military, you fire at the enemy's position, you try to keep their head down, and then another element moves. They set up, fire at the enemy's position, keep the enemy's head down, the other element moves, and you slowly close in, right?
Oh, okay.
And you can't get impatient with it, because if you get impatient with it, then people die. They die. And so when it comes to addiction recovery, or especially when it comes to pornography, you have to set in those sort of suppressing fire things in order to get to the point where you can close in on the enemy and actually seize the objective.
Wow, that's so well said.
Yeah, and it paints this good picture. Where it's just like this, because it is a war, it is a battle, and when you can think about it in a strategic mindset like that, then you're able to kind of just make more sense of the whole recovery process. Right.
So speaking of that, then what is your, you know, thoughts on social media? Because obviously this is a big thing now. I mean, you know, I heard it once said, we used to look up for inspiration. Now we're all looking down. And social media has taken over. It just has. Let's be real.
Yeah.
So what are your suggestions around that, or what are your thoughts around that? I'd just love to hear how you handle that in your life.
Social media is a hard thing. So I have a Facebook because that's how I keep in touch with a lot of people. Sure. From my mission and things like that. But I find myself having to catch myself, because the thing that people need to understand when it comes to social media is that the people that create it don't have your best interests in mind. Right. They only care about your eyes on their screen so that they can make money. Right. And so you don't think that they have some benevolent plan where it's like, oh, we want to create this so it's not too addicting because we don't want this to take over people's lives. No, they want you on it as much as possible so they can make more and more and more and more and more money.
Right.
And so the way they design social media is inherently to be addictive, to take your attention from other things. And it's cool too, like the psychology behind it is they try to fragment your attention as much as possible. So they don't want you paying attention to one thing for too long,
right?
Because then it will take you from the next thing. So you can so if you pay attention to one thing too long, then it's like, oh, okay, I got my fill. They want you to pay attention to one thing until another thing grabs your attention.
Right.
And it's just this constant loop of taking your attention.
Yeah.
And so sometimes I just have to I don't have the app on my phone. Sometimes I'll block it. I'll use the parental block and I'll be like, I need a week without Facebook. And I'll put Facebook in my parental block.
Yeah.
I'll be like, all right, there we go. Now I don't have to worry about Facebook for a week, But in terms of my recovery with being able to get a handle on pornography, I learned that social media was a preliminary act towards me looking to pornography.
Yeah, and that's why I brought that up, because a lot of my clients that I'm working with, they'll relapse, and they said, yeah, it started with me on Instagram, and I would just started going through maybe some things I shouldn't be looking at, which led to them. That's why I asked.
Yeah, and what you have to do is, so for example, if someone's addicted to alcohol, then a lot of times they'll find out, oh, I actually have to get rid of coffee and or I have to get rid of cigarettes, because cigarettes leads me to want to drink alcohol. But then what leads them to drink cigarettes? Oh, coffee. Usually I want a cigarette after I drink coffee.
Sure.
So what they have to do is, if they want to get a handle on the alcohol thing, they have to get a handle of the cigarette and the coffee thing.
Yeah.
And you kind of have to do the same thing with something like this. Is you have to, and in the military as well, anytime you go out on a patrol and you get in enemy contact, you write what's called an after action report. So you write about the incident that happened, if there's any casualties, if any equipment was destroyed, what you learned about the enemy, it's a really comprehensive report.
Sure.
And you have to do the same thing anytime that you relapse. You say, all right, what led me here? What are the decisions that I made? Because for those of you who can empathize with this, when you have a problem with pornography, you make choices up until a certain point. And then there's this point where the animal brain turns on, and it's you're not stopping at that point.
Yeah.
And so what you have to do is you have to take those steps back and be like, what were those decisions that I made earlier when I had my agency, when I had the ability to choose? What were those choices, and how do I make sure that I don't go down that same route?
Right.
And for me, Instagram was a huge one where I just had to I just deleted my account completely. So I don't have Instagram anymore. And that was for me. And I feel like that's a lot of people. I know some dudes that they're like, all right, I'm done with smartphones for a little bit. And that's their way of suppressing fire.
Sure.
They're like, okay, I'm just going to go with a flip phone for a while, get my head clear. And then, later on, then they can introduce a smartphone back, because they are really useful and they're great tools. But
they really are a lot of good you can do with those. But I love that. And what I call that is in it to win it. I'll do whatever it takes. If that means I got to go back to a flip phone for a little while, that's what I'm going to do. Yeah. Because I need to kind of stop what's been going on. Yeah, I love that. I really love that. Shifting gears just a little bit, I think you were involved in creating a program in the YSA ward, right, called the Healing and Recovery Program. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Yeah. So I was involved in as much as I was in it, and then I made a couple suggestions to change it. So I didn't create it myself. My stake president, my church leader, he was the one who brought that to me, and it was amazing. So a lot of the feedback that I got when I reach out to people for pornography was just keep praying, keep reading your scriptures, keep going to the temple, keep doing those spiritual things, and eventually it's going to go away. But I felt really what it was, and this is the analogy I use, is I'm in the ocean, I'm struggling to keep my head above water, and then there's people on a ship, and they don't have any bad intent, and they're just keep swimming, keep swimming, keep swimming. And that's what I kind of felt, is that people were just telling me to keep swimming. And I'm like, throw me a life raft.
Right. This is exhausting.
Please. Yeah. I'm getting tired.
Yeah.
And finally I get to this this congregation that the leader there, he calls me in, and I tell him, because I'd always been open and honest after my mission that I struggled with it. And he's like, let's get a handle on this. I have this program. It's called the 12-Step Healing and Recovery Program. And it's a modified addiction recovery program. And the reason why I think this was so valuable is not everyone is addicted, right?
Sure.
So you can struggle with an addicting substance without being an addict, right?
For sure.
Where and it's really easy for us to see this with alcohol, right? So like there's the guy who drinks every single day and can't go without it. Then there's the guy who drinks 3 times a week. Then there's the guy who gets plastered every single weekend. Yeah. And then there's the guy who just drinks at certain events. And so they're all using the same substance, and the substance is addictive, but they're not all in the same category. And so if you take a guy who, he just has a problem, like on the weekends, he'll just get plastered and he wants to stop getting plastered. If you take him to an addiction recovery program where it's just people that are like every single day, it's harder for them to relate. And a lot of it is just it's not as specific to their situation. Okay. So the healing and recovery program, was for people that, weren't clinically addicted to pornography, right? Yeah. And so, because there's a lot of guys that it's a couple days a week, or once a month or once a week. And so what happened was you go to these 12-step meetings once a week, and they would just talk about, it's pretty simple. They would just talk about the step that week that you're going through, and then everyone would just go around and share, just like a normal one. But it was specifically for pornography. Because our church has an addiction recovery program, but it's for all addictions, right?
It's kind of a broad
and I went to one of those at the beginning, and like there were people there that like had serious struggles that were very, and I don't want to minimize my struggle or anyone else's, but like they were really heavy, and I almost felt like an imposter being there. I'm like, I shouldn't be here. Like what I've gone through and the way my life's gone is nothing compared to like some of these people that have like had real trials in their life. Yeah. And so I didn't feel, I had kind of imposter syndrome. Like I'm going to this addiction recovery program.
Yeah. Well, I don't belong here.
Yeah. And so, we would do those, and we'd share, and it was the most uplifting meeting in my whole entire life. Like to be able to just go, and the humility that is shown there, and the brotherhood that was given, it gave me the strength to move forward. And for anyone who's listening who has wondered, like, what should I go to a group, no matter what your struggle is with addiction, whatever the source of addiction is, I should say, go to a group. The reason why it's so important is because at certain points, you can't see the light at the end of the tunnel. Right. Your addiction's so far in your face that you can't see the light at the end of the tunnel. And so to go to a meeting where there are people that are at different phases of recovery, and for them to bear their testimony that, what, I hadn't seen the light, but now I see the light, or I'm getting really close to the light, or I'm stepping through the light, or I'm in the light, and they're just there inviting people and trying to be like, keep going, keep going, keep going. To go to a meeting like that is so helpful in your recovery, because it gives you a renewal of hope. Wow. Because fighting an addiction is exhausting, and it's tiring, and you want to give up. And to be able to go and just get that renewal of hope every week, it was key.
Yeah, it's like someone threw you a life preserver. You don't have to swim so hard anymore. Yeah. You can just rest for a second. I can
rest for a little bit. Yeah.
Like I can finally get my bearings a little bit. Okay.
Get your bearing, gain some strength, and come up with a strategy. Yeah. And to go along with that, just to kind of finish up what the program looked like, there was go to that. You had an accountability partner that was assigned to you as well, and you would text them every single day, and just say it was a good day. If you messed up, you text them, and you would meet with them, and they would just give you, first off, accountability. Accountability is huge when it comes to overcoming any sort of bad habit, and also they were also another source of just hope. They loved you independent of how many times you messed up. Yeah. And that was awesome. And it also, having an accountability partner, it allows you to renew that humility and honesty over and over again. So every single time you mess up. So if you're only talking with someone once a week or once every other week or once a month, what happens is you only have to be honest one time.
Right.
And if you messed up, like let's say it's just once a month, you messed up at the beginning of the month, like it's a lot easier to come in and say, oh, I messed up at the beginning of the month, but I've been good since then.
Yeah.
But it takes so much humility and honesty to screw up, and then 15 minutes later text an accountability partner and say, I screwed up again.
Yeah, that's true.
It helps you change. It helps you maintain that humility and that honesty that is so key to overcoming an addiction.
Sounds like an awesome program.
Mm-hmm.
That's beautiful.
Awesome stuff. And to go along with that, there was like scripture study every day, prayer, and doing something called indexing, which for those of you who don't know, it's pretty much it's getting information from like documents and putting them into the computer so people can find things pertaining to family history.
Right. Gotcha.
And it was all necessary. They're all just a little piece of the puzzle.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we mentioned at the beginning of this, you and your wife have a weekly podcast called I Stand at the Door,
Mm-hmm.
which is symbolic, which we can talk about. But tell us about this new adventure you're doing here.
So we, I went on a podcast about a month ago, and I just told my story. And for me, this is not a taboo subject because I talk about it. I've been open about it for a while. I've spoken to congregations, church congregations. I've worked with friends and family to help them in their struggle with it. And so to me, it's not taboo. And so I kind of almost forgot, like, oh, this is not a taboo subject. And then I went on this podcast, and dozens of people reached out and said, for the first time, I feel like I'm not alone in this. Yeah. I feel like you spoke about it in a de-shaming way.
For sure.
And I want to change now. And we just felt overwhelmed and just felt like God was saying, like, hey, people need this. There needs to be a change in our culture. And I just need you to tell your story and then point people to me, and I'll help them out. Yeah. And so me and my wife, we just decided, like, you know what? I don't know a ton about doing a podcast. She was really nervous about it. She's not as she wasn't as excited about it as me. She hasn't talked about it as much as I have. Sure, yeah. And we thought,
well, it's vulnerable. You're putting yourself out there, right?
Mm-hmm. You're putting yourself out there, and then also there's just like that part in you that's like, oh, is anyone going to listen? Am I going to get obsessed with trying to get people to listen? Am I going to get, if people don't listen, am I going to get, like, feel bad, discouraged? Yeah. And so we finally were just like, you know what, let's do it. And so we started this podcast called I Stand at the Door. And the reason we call it that is because there's this famous picture of Jesus Christ standing in front of a door and knocking. And I've always loved that picture because there's no doorknob on his side of the door. And so you have to be the one to let him in. And I've always asked myself the question, what is it that keeps us from letting him in? Yeah. And in my experience, I think that it's because we have a dirty house. And we don't want to let such an important guest into such a dirty house. Sure. And so what we do is we're like, okay, I'm going to straighten it up first, then I'm going to go to the Lord. And what this does is it tricks us into thinking that we can handle these problems on our own. And what happens is our house just gets more and more and more and more dirty. And then it could get to the point where our house is so filled with junk that we can't even get to the door. Right. And so that's good, pretty much good visual. Yeah, the purpose of the podcast is to de-shame the problem with pornography so that people can feel comfortable to open the door and say, this is who I am. I want to change. And that's really the purpose. Is this where you're bringing on guests, or is this more of just you and your wife talking about a subject, or is it both? Or yeah, we want to do both. And so the way that we've done 2 episodes, our third one's coming out this next Sunday. Nice. And these ones are just her and I talking. And the reason I love her being on it too is because although women struggle with pornography as well, it's primarily a male issue. And there's a lot of spouses who feel, hopeless when it comes to it because their spouse is struggling with it and they don't know how to deal with it. And so my wife gives a really good perspective for women on how do you deal with it from a spouse's perspective? Yeah. From someone who loves someone that is struggling with this problem. And she's also just very, very spiritually minded and very smart as well. And so, we have episodes where we just talk about certain issues, and then I have a friend who is a counselor, and he specifically helps people with pornography. And so after the next Sunday we're going to do a question and answer, because I've gotten dozens of tons of questions from people after that first podcast, and we're just going to sit down, and him and I are just going to talk about those questions.
Great.
And eventually I want to get other people on to share their stories.
Sure,
and
yeah.
I really just want it to be a resource for people who struggle with pornography, who have someone in their life who struggles with pornography, or just anyone who's trying to overcome something and is looking towards Jesus Christ to help in that.
Yeah, love it. That's exciting. Yeah, very cool. So we mentioned also as well, you work at Operation Underground Railroad.
Yeah.
What a great place, right? And obviously their fight against child sex trafficking. Talk about that and what your role is there.
Yeah, so right now I'm in the donor relations aspect of Operation Underground Railroad. So I do public speaking. I work with individuals and companies to raise money and awareness. And, it's an awesome job. I love it. It's one of those things where I'm happy that I get to be a part of it, but I'm sad that I have to be a part of it, where it's
right.
The fact that there is child sex trafficking and it is as prevalent as it is, it's really sad. But if it's going to be there, then I want to be on the team that's fighting against it.
Exactly.
And so it's a great organization, and we've assisted in rescuing over 4,000 survivors of human trafficking.
Amazing.
And we've assisted in the rest of over 2,500 traffickers.
Really?
So it's
that's
crazy.
That's amazing. But I'm part of that sad feeling too, is there's so much more out there, that's going on. But it's great. I'm grateful for an organization like this that's actually out there fighting it.
It's kind of like we use the starfish analogy a lot. You've heard the story where there's the boy throwing the starfish, and I've heard you share it on your podcast before.
Yeah.
The boy throwing the starfish into the ocean, and the whole beach is covered in them, and he doesn't want them to dry out and die. And someone comes up and asks, "Why are you doing that? There's a whole beach. What you're doing doesn't matter." And then he throws one in, and he says, "Well, it mattered to that one."
Exactly. And
that's really what it is. There's an estimated 2 million children that are being sold for sex, 10 million that are being sold for labor and sex, that are being trafficked, they're being enslaved. And it's just a drop in the bucket, but it matters for the one.
Yeah.
And
wow.
It's great to be part of something that is so purpose-driven.
That's beautiful. If there's someone listening to your story right now, and I know there is, who's struggling, who's battling, pornography and everything that comes with it, the depression, the shame, and at times, even suicidal thoughts and things like that, what advice could you give them? What could you tell them right now if they feel like they're stuck in this spot and they're not sure what to do?
The first thing is that you're not alone. I thought that I was alone for so long. I thought that I was the only one that struggled with it. I thought that I was dirty, and that if anyone ever knew about this, that no one would ever want to be my friend. No one would ever love me. And it's just not true. You're not alone. And there is actual hope and healing. The other thing that I would say too is that the process is long, it's arduous, but it's worth it. And you're going to come out stronger on the other end.
Yeah.
You're not going to be beaten down.
Right.
You will be beaten down during the process. You're going to be tired. But when
Yeah.
you come out on the other end, you're going to turn around and you're going to be a different person, and you're going to be better.
Wow, I love that. Yeah, because I think a lot of people, that's where they get maybe frustrated, and I'm speaking from just interviewing thousands of clients over the years, where they get to that, I didn't realize how hard this was going to be. Like you said, it takes time. There's a process involved, and again, we're so like, I want it now kind of mentality. But I love that you said that. I think it does take time, but we will be stronger and better for it because we went through that process. Right?
Yeah, and I think that it's important that we have that long-term. So I think one thing that I think is a very useful process to go through is take the road that you're on and fast forward 10 years. Where is that going to take you?
Mm-hmm.
And then make an adjustment. Fast forward 10 years, where's that going to take you? And if you're on a road, if you're sad right now and you're depressed right now and you don't change anything, it's only going to lead to more depression.
More of it.
And more of it. But if you have the courage now to just make, and it can just be a slight change, then 10 years down the road, you could be in a completely different place. 1 year down the road, 2 years down the road. Like it takes time, but I'm also a big proponent of this idea of incremental change. So for example, if you have a problem with keeping your room clean, let's just take that as an example. Right. I'm a big believer that your house is a microcosm of your life as well,
sure.
Like your room. So if your room is messy, then you're probably disorganized and your life is kind of a mess, right?
I agree with that. Yeah.
And so totally. I think if you want to change your life, start with changing your room. And or cleaning your room. There's a guy that I admire named Jordan Peterson, and that's kind of what he talks about is cleaning your room. And so for example, maybe you're not capable right now to clean your whole room. Maybe it's just too much for you. So just start by making your bed. Make your bed every single day.
Yeah. And
you do that every single day for a month. And then after a month, you become the type of person that can make his bed every day.
Right.
And then you say, okay, well, I don't really put my clothes away, or I don't put my laundry away when I'm done. All right, well, that's your new thing. You've already built the habit of making your bed.
Right.
So move on to the next thing. And I think that we get so, like I said, short-minded, and we want big change now.
Yeah.
But it takes small change to make big change. And so break down the changes you need to make in your life, and just work on them one at a time. And slowly you'll see that incremental change does not yield incremental results, but exponential results.
Right.
So you do one thing every single day for a year, it's going to yield way bigger results than just doing one little thing every day.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
No, that's great advice. I love it. Well, if someone wanted to reach out to you, Hayden, and get to know you better, learn more about what you're doing, learn about your podcast, what would be the best way for them to reach out to you?
Yeah, so you can find me on Facebook. Hayden Paul is my name, and I'm in Salt Lake City, Utah. So you can type in Hayden Paul, Salt Lake City, Utah, or you can reach out to me through email at hayden@istandatthedoor.com. It's HAYDEN, and if you have any questions, or if you struggle with this problem of pornography, and you know someone that does, or you're a parent who's trying to navigate how to handle it with their children, or you're a spouse, write any questions, and love to address them on the podcast. But just for anyone listening, recovery and healing, it's real. And wherever you may be now, it doesn't need to be that way forever. And if you just have the courage to move forward, seek help, then you can set yourself up on a path to healing and recovery.
Yeah, love that. Going back on your story, when you were on your mission and you were feeling just the shame over, like this cloud over you, but then you finally shared and how you felt like, it feels so good to get this off my chest, and I feel so much better. And when you said they didn't send you home, but your mission president said,
Go
serve.
serve.
I mean, that hit me. I mean, I even wrote it down. I'm like, wow. I mean, how simple the answer is, but how powerful it is when we serve, right? And that's what you're doing. I mean, look about what you're doing since all through your mission and all the way up to this point in your life. That's what you're doing.
Yeah.
And that's why I think I'm pointing this out for a reason. Is that's why you're successful in where you're at right now, because you're serving. And I say this because I want my listeners. Yeah. I think one of the greatest things we can do to overcome anything and to stay in the space we need to be is help someone else. And so that hit me so hard when you shared that, Hayden.
Yeah, that step 12 of the healing or the addiction recovery booklet that I worked out of. It's having had an awakening through the atonement of Jesus Christ, share these principles and practice them in all you do.
Wow.
And that's I still go to those 12-step meetings,
Right.
not just to share my story, but I get stuff out of it too.
Right.
And the last thing just that I'll share
No,
is
you're good.
I've closed in on the enemy. We've taken the enemy out, back to my analogy about the cover and move.
Yeah.
Taken the enemy out, and now I've taken that position, and now I'm just fortifying it because I know the enemy's coming back.
Yeah.
And so
gotta be ready
I'm
for it.
fortifying it,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm doing daily things that are going to keep me, on this path and away from this enemy.
Yeah. Wow. Beautifully said. Well, Hayden, I can't thank you enough, man. Thank you for coming here and sharing your amazing story and being vulnerable. And you're doing amazing things. You are truly a light in this world, and I'm so blessed to be sitting here with you to hear it firsthand.
I feel the same way.
You know what I mean?
I feel the same way. Thank you for what you do.
No, you bet. I appreciate it, and I'm so grateful that our good friend Richard Osler got us lined up, and we love him and his work that he's doing.
Mm-hmm.
That guy's doing amazing work too, and
Awesome.
it's just great to see all these people out there. And you're going to be doing that, and you'll be doing this for the rest of your life. And I'm excited to see where your stuff goes. And if there's anything I can do to help you in that cause, I'm here to help you.
Of course, thank you. I appreciate it.
You betcha. Well, there you go, listeners. Man, another amazing story from another amazing individual. Please reach out to Hayden. Especially if you are struggling with pornography, or if you have a son or a daughter who's struggling with pornography. This guy knows what he's doing. He's been through it, and he's got a lot of great things that he can do to share and help you and or a loved one. So till next time, and I love you guys, and thanks for supporting this.